Hello and welcome to one of the last segments of our Academy video. Right now we're going to be looking at reassembling the entire gun back together again. To start this out, I'm going to set this entire chassis aside and I'll focus on getting this hop-up back together again. So all the parts I'm focusing on right now is our C-clip, our nub, our adjustment wheel, the hop-up bucking itself, the hop-up chamber, and then this barrel assembly which has our two alignment O-rings already installed, this tension spring, as well as an alignment collar already installed on the barrel. So let's start out with putting this bucking back onto the barrel. So you'll see there's a groove on the bottom of the barrel and there is a proud little ridge on the inside of the bucking. We align those two together. Once you got it started, give it a little twist, making sure it's not turning free, and then we can gently push the bucking back up and over into the window. Now to give it a final check, we can look down inside and we can see that diamond shape through, and we can slightly press on it so you can actually see it protruding there very nicely. Now that we've got the bucking on, we'll notice that there's two flats to the barrel and we'll see that there's a little divot where our bottom screw used to be. Right now we'll grab this hop-up chamber itself, looking at where the screw is and aligning it with the bottom there. Now alignment doesn't have to be absolutely perfect, but when we turn it around and we see the two flats, then we can see that when we've pushed the barrel into place, that they are more in the forward position there of this window. At this point we can get our C-clip in, making sure that the front edge of it, the flat face, not the open face, is clipping in position there. Once that's clipped into position, the barrel shouldn't move around that much anymore. We can move our collar back to seat flush with the front of the hop-up chamber. And now we can drop in our nub, which again, the rounded curved edge over there should be facing outwards, and then the chamfered flat edge should be facing inwards towards our hop-up window. So we can pop that guy back in place and we can push on it. You should be bouncing up and down, and then everything's good. Now we can take our adjustment collar and adjustment wheel, push and twist until we feel it's in place, and now we can check the adjustment. Everything's working well. To check the full adjustment, you can aim down the barrel looking through it with one eye while turning this adjustment wheel from one full setting to 0, and we'll be able to see exactly what's going on the inside. If our hop-up nub is pushing the hop-up rubber all the way down and releasing it again, everything is perfect. Now just to finish this job, we'll grab a small hex key and we'll just tighten this little hex key on the bottom. Do not over tighten this because this will misform your barrel and it will affect your trajectory and your accuracy. So when you're tightening this, tighten it very carefully, 2 fingers only, to the point where you feel resistance, and a tiny twist after that. Really, it does not need much, it just needs to make sure that everything is seated. We can set this inside of our outer barrel for now and set that aside. Focusing now back onto the chassis, we can get all these pieces back together again. Now the first piece I'm going to be focusing on here is getting our gearbox back inside. So to do this, I'm going to take the cable and put it through the round hole on the bottom face of that trunnion, and then carefully place this back inside. Might need a little bit of wiggling because that big magnet inside of the motor itself is getting stuck to the metal body. Just jiggle it around until it sits flush like this. Now to check alignment, you can actually look on the side here. Those two screw holes should align with these two holes on the chassis itself. So right now I want to flip it back up and over, and I'm going to be getting this spring back onto the spring guide of the charging handle. I can get the charging handle itself back on again by making sure that the spring guide's going through the small hole on the back section there. and sliding this into the guide rail here at the same time. Now that's back in place. I can slightly pull that backwards, and then I'll take one of these screws and pop it back into the trunnion. Now we removed three. Two short ones came out of the gearbox, and one slightly longer one with a domed head came out of the trunnion. So for that, I'll place it back into position, grab the correct Allen key, and tighten it back down again. Now this doesn't need to be over tightened, as don't any of the other screws. Just nice and snug, and you're good to go. You can release the charging handle and everything should be good. Right now we flip it back to the other side and get those two screws back in, locking the gearbox in place. Now our second one. There we go. Now we're good to go on that front. Next, I'm going to focus on getting our top cover back on again. Now to do this, we can turn the gun slightly, and you'll see here where the main pin goes through, there's a smaller hole on the bottom edge of it. This is to locate our main spring's little ear. We pop that in there and locate the hole, making sure everything's lined up. Next, we need our feed tray. Feed tray will go on, and you'll see that the spring sits on the outwards edge of this feed tray where all the holes are. And next we'll have this top cover itself, which will go up and over this section here. Now once I've got everything aligned, approximately I'll need this large pin, and I'm putting it in with the larger edge that's cut on the side of the charging handle, and the smaller little groove coming towards me, towards where this locating set screw is on the left hand side of the gun. So now going through the top cover, gently finding the alignment of the feed tray, and then placing it all the way through. You'll see now here, I might need to lift the spring slightly out of the way, so that it can sit through the center of that as well. There we go. And now we can push it through until on the left-hand side, the pin sits flush with the edge of the top cover itself. And at this point, I can take a small Allen key again and just tighten it down. So once again, making sure this is flush, tightening down the set screw. Don't over tighten it. Once it's snug, it's good to go. We can check function. Feed tray out of the way, top cover can open and close, and the spring functions as it should. We can close that up and flip the chassis upside down. Next, we're going to be reinstalling this trigger assembly and the grip assembly. So safety, on and off, and we can see that this screw pops out, which initiates us shooting by triggering the switch inside of the gearbox. So to align everything, we need our small flat screwdriver. We can align the screw with the screw hole, and then place the screwdriver through, and then turn it anti-clockwise until everything tightens and aligns with itself. There we go. Once it gets to the full outward position where it needs to be, just give it a tiny turn, nothing too hard, and then we're good. Up next, we can reinstall the stock itself. To do this, we'll need the stock and these two pins, the large one and the small one, along with the small knob. So to help us do this, we're going to pop it on with the two ears facing the top in the chassis, and the one ear just facing where the grip is a little bit. Hold it in position and take the long pin and place it through. This will help us with alignment. And then we'll take the small pin and align everything on the bottom. Now, this might be a little bit tight, at which point, for the alignment, you might have to undo the small screw on the front again, turning it clockwise, so it's slightly looser. We can then put this pin through a little bit easier, making sure alignment is perfect. Knocking it carefully with something that's non-marring, and then we can tighten this front screw back down again, turning it anti-clockwise and turning it snug. Next, we can just make sure that top pin's still in position and return this knob into position. Next, we can focus on reassembling the handguards and the outer barrel assembly, including the inner barrel. Now, to make this a little bit easier, let's quickly focus onto the muzzle brake itself. To reattach the muzzle brake, we take this little washer, pop it up and over the O-ring, and turn this into position by turning it anti-clockwise. And then to locate it, we just make sure that the little set screw is done up on the bottom end of the barrel. Again, not to over tighten it, just finger tight, and we're good to go. We don't want to crush all of our 14 counterclockwise threads on the end of that barrel. Now, at this point, we can actually reassemble this first, or we can reassemble the handguard. It's completely up to you. It can be done both ways. For the sake of showing you how everything aligns, I'm going to be leaving the handguards off and doing that last, so that we can see exactly how the hop-up should align with the feed tray. So right now I'll open up, and to make this a bit easier, to balance it, I'll place the magazine back into position, not plugging it in. So right now, moving this feed tray out of the way, we can see the red nozzle on the inside, and we can now place the barrel assembly in through that gap. Now at this point, you'll notice on the top of the hop-up chamber, there is the hole for the nozzle on this side, and then the hole on this side is for the BB feeding. Now we turn that so that it's facing the same direction as where the BBs are coming from, which is from this feeding section here, from the magazine well. On the bottom edge of this hop-up chamber as well, there is this groove that aligns on the inside of the gearbox itself as well. So once you've found that alignment, then it should slide over the nozzle. At this point, I want to turn to make sure everything is aligned. Right now, you can see it's in the incorrect position, but I turn the barrel clockwise until it doesn't want to turn anymore. And now I can release the outer barrel into position all the way back. Whoop. There we go. Okay. Once you've pushed this down into position, you would have heard a firm click. And right now you can check it by pulling forward on the outer barrel, and it should not pop back out again. At this juncture, we can reassemble our top and lower sections of our handguard. We'll focus on the top first, placing it up and over the chassis, and then aligning the 4 screw holes, so those 2 there. And then we can grab 2 of the small screws do the same on the other side. And then we can pop on our lower section of the handguard, the same one you need to remove each time you put in a new fresh battery. So again, 2 small screws, one on the left-hand side, one on the right hand side, and then one long one on the bottom. No need to over tighten any of those screws. Once they sit flush, a tiny bit further, and they're good to go. And at this point, we have a fully reassembled SSR249. And if you have any questions, please refer back to all of these videos or contact our customer relations team.